Father told me about something that my grandmother did when my father was a young boy. This behavior was so crazy, so psychotic, and I didn't realize how that behavior was impacting my relationships. My name is Malaika Neri. I'm a professional Indian matchmaker. I help smart women find the right person for marriage and family. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about how I was attracting toxic, unhealthy relationships and how I figured out how to walk the path of healing so that I could begin to attract healthy relationships into my life. The story begins several years ago. I was freshly returned after a long travel. I had been on the road for 2 years. I was back in town, starting to date again, and I was still pretty tired from traveling. I had just started my matchmaking business, so there was a lot of change going on in my life. And I decided, let me download some dating apps and give it a shot. My friend had just gotten married to her husband, who she met on Tinder, and she said, why don't you go ahead? There are lots of great men on dating apps. Go ahead and give it a shot. So I said, why not? Within a few weeks of using the dating app, I met this lovely guy who lived just 2 streets down the road from me. We met up, we went out for a date. As he was coming to the date, I saw him putting out his cigarette, and in that moment I thought, I don't want to date a smoker. But I went on that date anyway, and that date turned into a second date, which turned into a serious relationship. Now, this guy, let's call him Jack. At that time, I didn't know that his father was alcoholic, but a few months after we started dating, it was the first lockdown during COVID, and we went to stay with his parents in his family's countryside home. Now, at that time, I thought, this makes sense. This is what Indian families do. We go and stay with the family of our husband. It seemed totally normal to me. And even though we'd only been dating for a couple of months at that time, we were very serious, we were deeply in love, and we planned to get married. So it seemed completely normal to me that I would go and stay with his family, and it seemed completely normal to him that he would take me to go and stay with his parents in his parents' home or his ancestral home. This all seemed totally normal at that time, even though later my friends all told me, are you crazy? I didn't know any of that back then. And every night, staying in this big old house together, we would have dinner, me, him, and his parents. So at the dinner, we would eat some meal, maybe meat, maybe pasta, something like that, and there would be wine. Now, at the time, I was living in France, and drinking wine every night for dinner in France is really normal. No one bats an eyelid, and it's more a question of how many glasses are you going to drink, or what kind of wine are you going to drink, that rather than are you going to drink or not. It was just part of the culture, and I didn't think twice about it. I thought, well, I'm learning more about wine. This is normal. This is part of being part of a French family. I just need to roll with it. But as the weeks progressed, it was COVID, we weren't seeing anyone else besides the four of us. I started having stomach aches from drinking so much alcohol and also eating so much pasta, which I was having trouble digesting because I'm a little bit gluten intolerant. So all these stomach issues were coming up. And I also couldn't, all these stomach issues made me a little blind to what was going on with his family. Now, at that time, I noticed that his father would drink, he would buy these cartons of wine, box wine, and he would drink them throughout the day, and then at night we'd drink wine from a bottle. So I didn't really notice it because I was so caught up in my relationship with this lovely guy, and I was working, and at night we were having dinner together, so sometimes there was a lot of cooking to do for four people, and I didn't really have any time to pay attention to his father's consumption of wine, whether it be from a box or a bottle. One evening, my boyfriend and I were cooking together in the kitchen, and we were having a lovely time together. We were laughing. All of a sudden, his father comes in. He starts screaming. I don't even know what's going on. I'm frightened. I run out of the room. My boyfriend runs in a different direction, and his father is just screaming, and it's such a chaotic moment. And that was when I thought something is really wrong. A few months later, we had left that family home. We had gone back to our respective apartments in Paris. Our relationship was really on the rocks because at this point, it had become apparent to me that this guy's father was an alcoholic. I put two and two and together. I seen how his anger issues had combined with how much he was drinking, and I also realized, oh my gosh, this guy's father is drinking. He got really angry, and this guy didn't stand up to his father, which means something is going on. But I didn't ask myself why I was dating that guy. Remember, I was super in love with him, and I thought it's perfectly normal for me to be in love with a man who has a very complex past, because don't we all? And I really loved him. I saw my future with him. Unfortunately, the relationship just didn't last. His family didn't like me, and I felt really uncomfortable being with a guy who had an alcoholic father. Many years later, I started to ask myself, it's odd that I attracted a guy into my life with an alcoholic parent. In fact, I hadn't been thinking back then about the law of attraction, which dictates everything that goes on in our life. So, if you don't know anything about the law of attraction, let me give you a brief summary. The law of attraction is like the law of gravity. It works no matter whether you believe in it or not. So, just like gravity, if I take my glass of water and I let go, it'll fall. That's the law of gravity. Doesn't matter if I believe in it or not, this glass will fall. Law of attraction is the same. Whatever you have going on inside, you will attract, whether that's in relationships, in money, in your career, or in any aspect of life. So, something about me was attracting this guy with a very dysfunctional family life. And at that time, I didn't know anything about alcoholism. I had grown up in a family where alcohol was always present, but it wasn't something we consumed every night. It was a special occasion kind of thing. My father doesn't drink more than one or two glasses, even at parties. I myself barely drink, and at the time of filming this video, I'm not drinking at all. So, alcohol is not a big part of my life. And when I met this guy who turned into my boyfriend, we used to have a glass of wine every night at dinner, but because I was living in France, I thought this was normal. It's a huge part of the culture, and in many ways, when you don't drink wine, you're considered being anti patriotic. So I never asked myself twice, what does it mean to drink wine at dinner every night? I thought it was normal. In fact, the American Heart Association says that drinking two glasses of wine can even be healthy. Most Western governments say that a man's weekly capacity is about 15 glasses of wine. So that's like 2.2 glasses of wine every night. And for a woman, it's about one glass of wine, which is what I was doing at that time that I met that guy. But after we broke up, I started doing some research. I went online and I started Googling about alcoholics and went on the website of Alcoholics Anonymous, and then I found this other category: people who have grown up with an alcoholic parent, ACOAs, adult children of alcoholics. In these websites, I discovered a whole list of problems, this trauma that adult children of alcoholics inherit as a result of growing up with an alcoholic parent. And remember, this was an entirely new world to me. But somehow, despite the fact that my parents barely drink, I had attracted this guy who had an alcoholic parent. It was really bizarre. Then last month, I met a guy, found him really cute, felt super attracted to him, and then I discovered his father was also an alcoholic. And it was odd. I thought to myself, that's twice in a row that I've attracted a really cute, wonderful, loving, affectionate man into my life with an alcoholic parent. What's going on? So I discovered this YouTube channel by Dr. Sophie Vargas where she talks about some of the relationship patterns that adult children of alcoholics share. I'm going to give you the list and explain what each of these items mean. But as I discovered this list, I started asking myself, where in my life am I exhibiting these patterns and therefore attracting more of these patterns into my life? And how do I begin healing these patterns? So I'm sharing the backstory so you understand how I came to this conclusion of what I need to work on in order to actually attract a healthy relationship. It was through going through this very loving but ultimately extremely unhealthy relationship with this wonderful but troubled man that I realized, hey, something needs to change if I want to have a healthy relationship in my future. So Dr. Sophie Vargas talks about the 6 traits that adult children of alcoholics very often and almost usually experience in their relationships. Number 1 is the "it's all my fault" mindset. growing up with an alcoholic parent, you tend to think everything is my fault because the alcoholic parent very often blames the child for things that are out of the child's control. And when you're a child, you desperately need the love of your parents. You are fully dependent on them. So you start to internalize and think it's my fault. If my dad or mom is upset or having a bad day or drunk, it's my fault. So you're constantly internalizing and thinking it's my fault. As an adult, this can manifest as a partner saying, okay, you're criticizing me, it's my fault, and then they feel criticized even though you're saying, hey, can you pick up your clothes from where they are on the bedroom floor? And they're saying, you're blaming me, it's my fault. The second trait is loving unavailable people. Now, what I found so interesting in her YouTube channel, she explains how this can be not just loving people who are emotionally unavailable to care for you and love you, but loving someone who lives in a different country and therefore is unavailable to actually be with you because they are separated by an ocean. When you grow up with an alcoholic parent, you cannot get the love and care that a child deserves because the parent is alcoholic. They are addicted to alcohol, which makes them unavailable to give the love and the care and attention that the child needs. So the child develops this mindset of loving unavailable people that mimics the patterns that they grew up with. So I was attracting people into my life who were loving unavailable people, which meant that deep down I was somehow unavailable and I needed to work on fixing that pattern. The same with the it's all my fault. I had a tendency to internalize and to think, how can I fix this? Instead of saying, you know what, bad stuff happens in life, moving on, I would tend to internalize. And so I needed to get out of that mindset of I need to see everything as being my fault and instead just say, you know what, random stuff happens, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's good. I can't always control everything. I too was attracting people who were ultimately unavailable to me, just like this guy with an alcoholic father, and I need to work on that pattern of being more emotionally available to myself, for my own emotions, so that I could then attract more emotionally available men. The third trait is I will give and you will receive. Now, this is a common trait when you have an alcoholic parent. The parent is literally unable to give to you because they are addicted to alcohol. They are caught up in that disease of addiction, and so they're unable to give the child the love and care and emotional attention that the child needs. So the child develops this pattern of giving to the parent. In psychology, it's called parentification, where the child is forced to be the parent and give to look after the parent. This guy who I dated with the alcoholic father, he too was always giving to me, and I think at the time that I was trying to give to him too, but I don't know if I really did. In retrospect, I realized, was I giving enough love to myself? So I started to ask myself this question: in what ways am I not giving myself enough love and therefore attracting people who also have this giving but not receiving mindset? So I needed to learn to work on giving myself enough love, making my own cup overflow so that I could then attract a partner who we could have a relationship that was in balance of giving and receiving, rather than each just giving but neither person receiving and therefore not feeling loved. Trait number 4 is mind reading fantasies. Now, when you have an alcoholic parent, the parent behaves in unpredictable ways because they are drunk, because they are under the influence of alcohol. Their system is depressed. Very often they get angry, they might yell, scream, throw things, be violent, be mentally, physically, emotionally abusive. And just as this guy's father had behaved with us in the kitchen, he had all of a sudden screamed at both of us. It was very unpredictable and very frightening. So as a child of an alcoholic parent, you develop this ability to always start mind reading your parent, thinking, what are they going to do next? How can I prevent them from acting in an unpredictable manner? What do I need to do to make sure that they feel safe? You're always trying to think about what is going through the parent's mind, but without having any facts. So a child cannot always know what an adult is thinking, and a child doesn't have the mental resources to know what an adult is thinking. Therefore, it's called a fantasy. Adult children of alcoholics sometimes do the same thing. They have these fantasies that they know what you're thinking and they project those onto their partners. I was doing the same thing, projecting onto my partners, the guys I was attracting into my life. Oh, they're probably thinking this, rather than having an open conversation saying, "What do you think?" I remember the first time I ever lived with a guy, I wanted him to clean the bathroom, and instead of just asking him, "Can you clean the bathroom?" I went and cleaned it myself and had a mental argument with him in my head saying, "I'm so upset that you didn't clean the bathroom." But I never had a conversation with him, and I had all this resentment towards him, thinking he just thinks he doesn't need to clean the bathroom, when in fact, I hadn't actually had a conversation with him. This is a great example of a mind reading fantasy. Number five, finding people to fix. So the adult child of the alcoholic parent is dealing with a parent who has a disease of addiction, who is really struggling and who needs a lot of help. Most of the time they're probably not getting that help, and so the child is in the fixer position of having to look after their parent. I was attracting the same model by looking for guys who were like projects. They were in some way wounded or had some kind of trauma that I was then going to fix. I would be in the position of savior. It would make me feel good. It would make me feel in control. And it was this control that attracted me, the opportunity to be in a position of advisor, counselor, coach, therapist. Rather than saying, this guy is an adult who can manage his own life, I saw myself as the helper who would fix and solve all of his problems. This was an unhealthy pattern that I need to break by first releasing any desire to control any other adult human being, and instead teach myself that other adults are living their own life. We can get on the same path to co create a beautiful life together as equal partners in that journey of creating and building a beautiful life. But I was not going to fix him. I was not going to coach him. I was not going to be his therapist. I was not going to be his guide or mentor. I was simply going to love him and accept him exactly as he is today, even if he's never fixed. And number six, manipulation and a fear of vulnerability. So adult children of alcoholics, they have grown up with parents who constantly manipulated them because they were under the influence of alcohol, which messed with their brain chemistry, and so they manipulated the child. The child grew up with learning that manipulation is a normal pattern of communication, and also constantly feeling unsafe, so they're never able to be vulnerable because there's no safe space for them to express their feelings. I kept asking myself, am I doing this myself? And it took me many years to get to the point of asking this question, am I manipulating other people? Because I was attracting people who manipulated me. It made me remember a situation when I was about 5 years old. I had a really close relationship with my father. It was a classic daddy daughter situation. And my dad really spoiled me. He bought me lots of presents, he took me on lots of walks and outings, and he really loved me. And I remember there was this moment when I got mad at him for something really small. And I said, you know what? I'm just not going to kiss you and I'm not going to hug you for the next 2 weeks. And he laughed and he thought I was joking. And I said, no, I'm serious. And then I didn't hug or kiss my father for the next 2 weeks. Now, just imagine if your child who you love and adore refuses to touch you for 2 weeks. This is what I did to my father at the age of 5 years old. So even though I was such a young child, I understood my ability to manipulate an adult through controlling my affection. This is a classic definition of manipulation in adulthood. It can manifest itself as saying, I'm not going to have sex with you if you don't do XYZ. I'm not going to love you. I'm not going to hug you when you come home if you don't behave in the way that I want. This is all a form of control. It's a form of manipulation, and it's a fear of being vulnerable and saying your behavior or your actions hurt my feelings. They made me feel scared, they made me feel unsafe, they made me feel vulnerable, and I need you to help me because I feel scared right now. As a child, of course, I did not have the vocabulary to express these feelings. I didn't even know what was going on. I just knew that something my dad had done, I can't even remember what it was, had hurt my feelings. And to retaliate, remember, manipulation is a form of retaliation, it's not a form of sharing emotions, there's no connection happening. I manipulated him by totally withdrawing my affection, becoming cold, shutting down. I refused to kiss him or hug him for the next 2 weeks, and it made him really sad. I had thought this was a joke. Ha ha, 5-year-old who refused to hug and kiss her father. But in retrospect, I realized, oh my gosh, this was manipulation. And sure, I was a child. Maybe you're not going to blame a child, but I did it intentionally. There was nothing random or surprising about my choice. I'm sharing these 6 traits with you to show you that these toxic behavior patterns begin really young. I'm only just figuring out how I myself have been attracting these toxic behavior patterns in the men who I have attracted in my life. These men are really lovely people and they have been so kind and so loving to me, but they have demonstrated these toxic behavior patterns in order to attract healthy men with healthy boundaries and have healthy relationships with them. I had to first figure out where in my life was I exhibiting these toxic behaviors, and I used this list demonstrated by adult children of alcoholics as a kind of shorthand to begin my healing journey. I hope that this list has been helpful to you, and in the links below I've included a free worksheet that you can download if you'd like to start working on your own healing journey to attracting healthy relationships. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will talk to you very